Gary Webb, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter who wrote a series of stories linking the CIA to crack cocaine trafficking in Los Angeles, is dead. He died at the age of 49, found Friday morning at his home in Sacramento County, dead of an apparent suicide. Moving company workers called authorities after discovering a note posted on his front door that read, quote, "Please do not enter, call 911 and ask for an ambulance." Webb died of a gunshot wound to the head, according to the Sacramento County Coroner's Office. He's survived by 2 sons and a daughter. Gary Webb's 1996 series in the San Jose Mercury News titled Dark Alliance revealed that for the better part of a decade, a Bay Area drug ring sold tons of cocaine to Los Angeles street gangs and funneled millions in drug profits to the CIA-backed Nicaraguan Contras. It provoked a fierce reaction from the media establishment, which denounced the series. Following the controversy, San Jose Mercury News executive editor demoted Webb within the paper. Gary Webb eventually resigned and pushed his investigation even further, publishing the book Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine explosion. We're joined on the telephone now by Bob Perry, veteran investigative journalist, wrote for AP and Newsweek. His reporting led to the exposure of what's now called the Iran-Contra scandal. His latest book is called Secrecy and Privilege: Rise of the Bush Dynasty from Watergate to Iraq. Bob Perry, welcome to Democracy Now!
Hi, Amy.
Well, I heard it from you this weekend that Gary Webb had died of an apparent suicide. Can you talk about Gary?
Well, I received a call on Saturday from the Los Angeles Times asking if I could comment about Webb's death. And I went on and explained that the country owes a huge debt to Gary Webb. What he did was revive a story that some of us at AP and then later Senator John Kerry looked into in the mid-1980s of how the Reagan-Bush administration had financed the Contra War in part by allowing the Contras to engage in cocaine trafficking. The evidence even in the mid-80s was quite strong, and Kerry did a fairly good investigation that was published in a report in 1989. But throughout this, the Washington press corps, the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, denigrated these stories. Of course, the Reagan-Bush administration denied them by and large, and that's where the story pretty much was left. Kerry had been ridiculed for being a conspiracy theorist, for following these leads, and it was Gary Webb who revived that investigation in '96 with his series in the San Jose Mercury News. And again, he was assaulted by these same news elements, the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times. But what he did was he provoked an investigation, an internal investigation at Justice and at the CIA. And those investigations, while the press releases tended to be protective of the agencies, the information contained in the long reports was devastating. Essentially, the CIA admitted that it was involved with the Contras who were actively participating in cocaine trafficking. The CIA Inspector General said that more than 50 Contras and Contra units were implicated in the cocaine trade, that the CIA knew about it real time, that it hid the evidence, that it obstructed justice. All these things were admitted by the CIA itself by 1998 in response to Webb's series. The great tragedy, I suppose, of the personal tragedy and the professional tragedy is that despite these admissions, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the LA Times still refused to deal with the facts. It seemed almost like the editors had more of a stake in covering up the truth than the CIA did. And so Gary Webb's career was allowed to be ruined. The people who were involved in protecting the CIA from those major papers, their careers blossomed. Jerry Sipos, the executive editor of the San Jose Mercury News, who essentially sold out Webb and his series, received an award from the Society for Professional Journalists for ethics because of what he did. So it seemed like all the people that did the wrong thing got the benefits, and Gary Webb and people, including John Kerry, who did honorable work on this topic, received no benefits at all, and in fact were damaged.
Robert Perry, I wanted to play a clip of an interview that we did with Gary Webb on May 20th, 1998. It was just after his book, Dark Alliance, was published, and he talked about the media reaction to his investigation in the San Jose Mercury News. This is Gary Webb, 1998.
I tried to think of another example of where the mainstream press took off after a reporter, and the only one I was able to think of was when that fellow wrote that sort of confessional about how he'd worked at the Wall Street Journal and had been a socialist all these years. And the hue and cry that went up over, my God, we actually let a socialist write our news for us. That's really the only other time it's been, this quite this intense.
Well, we now have your book, Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine explosion. Do you expect a similar explosion from the press, or will they try to deal with it by ignoring it?
Well, that remains to be seen. I think it'll be interesting. They couldn't ignore it before because it was in the newspapers. Now it's in a different arena. Now, books routinely get ignored that sort of challenge the status quo and challenge common knowledge. It might be more difficult this time because they had set up such a screaming contest earlier. This isn't the series anymore. This is 600 pages of documentation, of interviews. It's going to be awful hard to dismiss this as unsubstantiated or not backed up or overhyped, which were the criticisms that were directed against the series. Because the information's there now. It's all laid out, and it's, I didn't have to worry about some editor chopping off 15 paragraphs to make sure, the bra ad could fit on the page. I had the room to tell the story like it should have been told in the first place. And I think, looking back on this whole thing, I think the problem that we had in doing the series was that we were overly ambitious. We tried to tell a story in 10,000, 12,000 words that really needed about 150,000 words to tell accurately and tell completely. And it's sort of, I don't regret doing it, and I'm glad we did, otherwise the thing would never have gotten out. But in doing the book, I realized how sort of crippled we were just by the medium that we were trying to do it in. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the mainstream's reaction to the book is, if there is one.
Gary, the way the mainstream press dealt with the black community, responding in the way they did, I found remarkably condescending.
That was offensive.
It was basically, the attitude was, we understand why these people are so upset. Something terrible has happened to them, and it's finally nice to be able to blame it on someone or something.
Right.
So we understand this kind of over-response, or this willingness to believe in conspiracy.
I don't think there's any other word for it, but it was racist. I've never seen an entire race labeled as conspiracy theorists before, and this was really that's when I thought they'd really gone off the deep end, when they were trying to convince everybody that, well, these black people, they believe anything they're told, which was, when you boil it down, that's exactly what these articles were saying, and they tried to couch it in these very scientific and sociological terms as to why blacks distrust government. But the bottom line was, these folks will believe anything. And Tom Tomorrow did, I thought, just an amazingly good cartoon about this whole thing. When he had two New York Times reporters sitting around talking, and one of them said, well, just because the United States government has a history of lying to the American public, and just because there's 10 years of documented evidence of CIA involvement in drug trafficking, they actually think this might be true. And the other guy goes, those Negroes will believe anything. And that was sort of the reaction in a very cut down form of what these long wheezes in the Post. The New York Times did one, I think the LA Times did one, the Washington Post did one on why of course black people are upset because they all believe that Kentucky Fried Chicken will make you sterile, and as if they have no reason whatsoever to believe that the United States government doesn't have their best interest at heart at times. Look at the Tuskegee experiment, and you could go on through history to explain why people of color would not trust the government. But the other thing that these stories missed was that, you know, it wasn't just black people that were upset by this thing. I mean, I was on a lot of right-wing talk radio shows, and the people that called into those shows were as mad or madder than the black audiences that I addressed, because I mean, these were people who, I think, like me, believed what they were taught in school about the government. You know, the government always has your best interest at heart. The government would never do anything to harm its citizens. Drugs are evil. We would never be involved in it. And when they read the story and when they saw the documentation that we presented, they knew that they had been lied to. They knew they had been lied to for about 10 years on this whole drug war thing. And they were really offended. It wasn't that they grew up distrusting the government. It was just the opposite. They grew up believing in it. And here was yet another example of why their faith had been misplaced, because, you know, American citizens had been sacrificed to fight this crazy war down in Central America that really didn't mean anything to anybody but the people at the CIA.
Gary Webb in 1998, May 20th, an interview we did when his book, Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the Crack Cocaine Explosion first came out. This is Democracy Now! We'll get a final comment from investigative reporter Bob Perry. As you listen to Gary Webb, your thoughts, Bob?
Well, I think it's quite sad that that voice has been silenced. It was tragic and sad that the mainstream press reacted as it did. As I said to the LA Times on Saturday when they asked for my comments, which they did not publish, by the way, I said, you're going to have a hard time dealing with this story because the LA Times never even reported on the publication of the second volume of the CIA's report. And it was that second volume that went through in great detail, really corroborating not just what Gary Webb had reported, but allegations and evidence that's far, far worse than what was in the San Jose Mercury News series. This was a far darker scandal, went far higher up than anyone thought. The CIA's evidence even tracks the Contra cocaine problem into the White House, Ronald Reagan's White House. It tracks it into the CIA directly. That's what the evidence is. I'm putting up a story today on consortiumnews.com that will recount some of this evidence that has been lost to history. And it's just tragic that the LA Times and other major publications cannot now face the truth.
Well, Bob Perry, on that note, I want to thank you for being with us. People can check that story out at consortiumnews.com. And you can go to our website at democracynow.org, where we will compile all of Gary Webb's interviews. Gary Webb, the Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for the San Jose Mercury News, died of an apparent suicide. That does it for today's program. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Sharif Abdel-Qaddus, John Hamilton, Anna Noguera, Elizabeth Press, and Jeremy Scahill. Mike DeFilippo and Ryan Abernathy are our engineers. Again, our website is democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.